Welcome to our podcast, Undergraduates Rising in Support of the Environment, You Rise. This is Emily,
Nina,
and Lexi.
Today we will be covering the basics of climate change and some important information to know about climate change. Nowadays, there's a lot of information flying around about climate change and how it works. Hopefully, this podcast will be able to clear up those misconceptions and inform more and more people about the truth behind climate change.
First, let's start with our numbers segment, climate change by the numbers, and a commonly misunderstood statistic, the 2-degree difference. Most people know about the 2-degree difference that climate scientists and climate change activists frequently discuss, but this number is often misunderstood. The 2-degree difference represents a 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit increase in the global climate. These 2 degrees are what scientists around the globe have determined to be the maximum increase in temperature that humans could survive. Increasing the global temperature past 2 degrees will cause unprecedented damages and will change the planet to the point where we would not be able to successfully survive unless we make drastic changes. Unfortunately, keeping under that 2-degree change isn't a perfect solution either. Raising the global temperature via greenhouse gases has caused and will cause large changes in our planet. Increasing the temperature will cause more changes to our planet and to our lives, but we will delve into that more later on.
One of the crucial things about understanding climate change is understanding the difference between climate and weather. Many often misunderstand the two terms and use them interchangeably, but they actually represent two different things. Weather is the mix of events that happen every day in our atmosphere. Weather is predicted as a daily or weekly forecast and describes what each day is going to be like. For example, sunny or rainy, hot or cold, etc. Climate is what the weather is over a long period of time in a certain area. For example, Antarctica is known for its cold and windy climate. The climate is considered to be this way when you average out all of the daily observations, the weather. It is very often cold and windy. Some days may be hot, but on average, Antarctica is very cold and windy. Another way to understand the difference between climate and weather is looking at your closet. The outfit you wear for the day is like the weather, but the contents of your wardrobe are like the climate. Your day-to-day outfit might change, but the collection of clothes in your closet won't change that much.
Weather is caused by daily and sometimes hourly changes in the atmosphere, but what creates a climate? Climate is controlled by two major groups of factors, external and internal forces. External forces are planet-wide forces like the orbit of the planet, changes in plate tectonics, and changing in the conditions of the sun. These forces get a little complicated to explain, so we won't go into a great deal right now, but we will provide links for more information in the show notes. What is important to understand is that these forces change incredibly slowly. Our orbit takes 1 year to change, whereas plate tectonics can take years or longer to change. Needless to say, these conditions can be predicted and monitored, so their effects on climate are well documented. Additionally, there are internal factors such as changes in the ice sheets, the atmosphere, the vegetation, our ocean, and our land surfaces. These internal factors can change very quickly or very slowly. The natural cycle of cooling into the winter or the cycle of warming into the spring and summer are both examples of internal factors at work. The most important factor in this case is atmosphere. Humans are changing the composition of the atmosphere by producing more and more greenhouse gases. These gases act as blankets that trap heat and energy in our atmosphere. More gases means a thicker blanket and more heat being trapped in the atmosphere. The trapping then prevents more heat and energy from leaving and makes our planet hotter and hotter.
Now, how does this relate to climate change? Well, climate change describes the large changes that scientists have been observing in climate patterns across the globe. Scientists have been observing large trends such as an increase in temperature across the planet, rising sea levels, increase in droughts, and stronger and more frequent storms. The most dramatic indicator of climate change is the large change in temperature. There is a famous graph referred to as the hockey stick, which depicts the temperature change anomalies since the year 1000. Temperature change anomalies refer to unexpected temperature changes of each year. For example, if one year has 200 warm days and it usually only has 100 warm days, that year would represent a temperature anomaly. This graph fluctuates between colder years and warmer years until around 1900. Then there is a very sharp uptick in temperature anomalies that keep growing and growing until the year 2000. This graph was published in 1998, but it has since been edited to include more recent data. But the trend doesn't stop at 2000. The temperature anomaly continues to increase sharply in more recent years, proving that the prediction from 1998 was correct. This proves that there has been a dramatic increase in temperature since the 1900s and is still increasing to this day.
Now that we've convinced you that the climate is changing at unprecedented rates, you may be wondering how we know that it's humans responsible for these changes. I mean, the Earth is so big compared to us. As we previously discussed, climate is controlled by external forces such as the orbit of the planet, shifting plate tectonics, and changing conditions of the sun, as well as internal forces such as changes in the ice sheets, the atmosphere, the vegetation, the ocean, and the land surface. Humans are part of these internal forces. Scientists use data to generate models to determine which of these factors are responsible for the record-breaking climate that we see today. What we find is that humans have become the force of nature. Our effect on the planet has caused more changes to climate than any of these natural factors. One way that we can tell that humans are the reason for this unprecedented change in climate is by studying carbon dioxide. Scientists can tell how much carbon dioxide comes from natural sources and how much comes from fossil fuels. The carbon in molecules produced by fossil fuels have a different weight than the natural carbon in the atmosphere. The carbon that's released from the burning of these fuels have a heavier form of carbon called carbon-13. And the carbon from natural sources is carbon-12. This heavier form of carbon dioxide has been the largest contributor for carbon concentrations since the pre-industrial era, indicating that humans are changing the atmosphere.
Scientists also use other sources like tree rings, ice cores, ocean sediments, and fossils to help us understand what climate was like in the past. We also know humans are the reason for climate change because of ice core measurements. To take this type of measurement, scientists drill deep into the ice from places like the Arctic. Once they remove cores from this ancient ice, they measure the air pockets that are trapped in the ice. These pockets serve as time capsules as we can measure ancient greenhouse gas levels like carbon dioxide and methane. Coinciding with the Industrial Revolution, we see an increase in these greenhouse gases, which provides further evidence that humans are responsible for climate change. The oldest ice cores we have are from East Antarctica and are a record of the climate 800,000 years ago. These measurements from the past help us determine that modern greenhouse gas levels are unprecedented. Carbon dioxide levels haven't gone above 300 parts per million in the past 800,000 years. However, in 1950, we surpassed 300 parts per million of carbon dioxide and currently are reaching levels of 410 parts per million. Keep in mind that the effects of rising levels of carbon dioxide are not immediate. They have a natural delay, so we are not seeing these effects right now completely. Humankind has never seen these levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere before, so we don't know what the effects to our lives will be.
While humans are changing the planet's climate at unprecedented rates, we can all work together to change this trajectory. If you want to help mitigate climate change, there are so many things that you can do as an individual. This leads to our final segment, Little Doses of Hope. Helping to stop climate change is going to require a large lifestyle change, but it can start with really small changes. For example, switching your clothes washer and dryer to cold settings, so cold water or cold air, can reduce the amount of energy used by 75 or 90%. Additionally, you could turn off faucets when not using them or turn off the lights when not using them. These small changes can greatly reduce the amount of energy that each household uses and greatly lower the amount of coal or oil used to provide energy to your home. You could also try to substitute items that have a lot of packaging for ones that have a lot less packaging, requiring less waste. These changes may seem small, but have a huge impact if done whenever possible and by as many people as possible. If we all do our part and work together, then we can slow and even stop climate change. We will discuss the changes you can make even further in depth in our final podcast episode.
We hope to provide you with more information on climate change in our following podcasts. As we mentioned before, there seems to be a lot of misinformation on this topic, so when doing your own research, we would like to encourage you to stay mindful of who is sponsoring or putting out the information that you're being exposed to. It's always a good idea to look into the motives of who's funding the website you're getting your information from. Trustworthy information on this topic can be found at noaa.gov. That is NOAA.gov. Another trustworthy source of data is climate.nasa.gov. If you have any further questions after listening to this podcast, we encourage you to seek out information from sources such as these and other trustworthy news sources. We hope that you join us in our next podcast, where we will be discussing climate change and its impacts on everyday life. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have a lovely day.